Oh wow, forgive me guys. Turns out my previous video was not recording, so basically this is take two for me. I think it might be shorter, but it's fine. So in the previous video, we looked at the sensitivity analysis and uncertainty, and we dived deeper into the margin of safety as well as the degree of operating leverage. So anything that speaks to sensitivity and uncertainty, you need to discuss the margin of safety and the degree of operating leverage. And like I said, when the break-even sales are lower, it results into a higher margin of safety, and which is good for us because it means that it's less risky for us to take on this new venture. And if the break-even sales are high, that means the margin of safety would be low, and therefore it means it would be more risky for us to take on this project because it will be harder for us to break even. As simple as that. Degree of operating leverage, basically, if it's high, that means the fixed costs are high, but the variable costs are low. Therefore, the risk and demand are both high, and there's high expected returns if the expected demand is met technically. And then we have if the degree of operating leverage is low, that means the fixed costs are low and the variable costs are very high. Therefore, there's low risk and low demand, meaning that there's a lower chance that an upside potential might occur when demand is high. So rule of thumb is the greater the degree of operating leverage, the more aggressive the changes in sales activity will affect the profits. And that's basically sensitivity and uncertainty. Now, our main thing here is the multi-products. So, multi-products break even. We're going to first focus on the sales mix, and that is a combination of products, basically how we sell different product lines and how they make up our revenue line item. So the sales mix proportions, we can deal with them either using the units break even. And like I said, when we're given the information on units, we're going to use the unit break even. And basically, it's the rule of thumb, or it's the default method on how we determine break even. And unit break even point is the total fixed cost over contribution per unit. And then the revenue and contribution margin break-even point, basically the main thing is a revenue break-even point, which is the total fixed costs over contribution and times total sales. So now the first step is the unit break-even, right? We're going to focus on the unit break-even point. And the first step is to calculate the contribution for each product, right? So once, like I said in black there, we have A, which is 10,000 products or units, B, 5,000 units, C, 6,000 units. And then say, for example, the calculated contribution for each unit is 15 Rand for A, 10 Rand for B, and 5 Rand for C. Now, in step 2, we're going to look at the weighted average unit contribution. Like weighted average is the way you understand it. Don't need to remember, but So we're going to have product A over the total products times the product's contribution. As you can see in black there, I have it as A is equal to 10,000 units because A has 10,000 units. And basically the sum of all of those A, B, and C is 21,000. So that is the weighted average of A in relation to all the units produced, multiplied by A's contribution gives us the weighted contribution of A as 7 Rand 14 cents. And then in step 2, we need to combine or sum up all the weighted average contributions. So if you have 10 products, you're going to get the 10 weighted average, say 10, and sum it all up to get the total weighted average contribution, which is our 10 Rand 95 there, as I've calculated. And then in step 3, in our units break even, we're going to have the total fixed cost over the weighted average contribution. So be careful to not confuse it as the normal formula where it's just contribution per unit, because this is when we only have one product. Whereas here we are dealing with the multiple products, and therefore we need to get the break-even point for the multiple products. And then in step 4, we're going to get the product proportions to the break-even. And therefore it goes back to the proportions that we calculated here. So we're going to have the product A over the total products, and we're going to take the break-even point units that we got from question 3, and then we're going to see how many units of A, B, and C we need to produce in order for us to break even. Now remember, the main thing with break even is that we want to produce enough items in order for us to cover our fixed costs, and everything that is created in excess, that means that it's going to result in a profit for us. Okay, so now with the revenue break-even point, it's a bit more long, so I'm going to need you to lock in and see. So in step 1, we're going to, same as the unit break even, we're going to get the contribution per unit of each product. And then in step 2, we're going to get the contribution margin, the percentage per unit for each product. And I put it in there as the contribution over the selling price multiplied by the 100% to give us the percentage. So that is the contribution margin for each product. So we need the contribution margin for product A, B, and C. And then we're going to get the sales mix. So we're going to take this selling prices of each product, so selling price of A, B, and C, and then we're going to get the total sum of those selling prices. And basically similar as in FINAC, where in revenue, in allocating the transaction price, we need to determine the standalone selling prices of each performance obligation. Same thing here. We're going to determine the standalone selling prices, and then we get that weighting. And then in step 4, we're going to get the weighted contribution margin. So basically, we're going to take the contribution margin we calculated in step 2, which is the 2 there, multiplied by the sales mix that we got in step 3. Therefore, 2 times 3 gives us the weighted contribution that we want. And we're going to do that for products A, B, and C, like I've made an example of. And then in step 4, we're going to get the total weighted contribution margin, as you can see there, the contribution margin of A, B, and C, and that's going to give us the total weighted contribution margin as represented by A. Now in step 5, we're going to get the revenue break-even point, which is the total fixed cost over the weighted contribution. And this weighted contribution is basically the total weighted contribution. So if we have 10 items, we're going to have 10 weighted contributions that we need to add together in order to get the total weighted contribution. And then in step 6, we're going to have the product proportions to the break-even. So technically, we're going to have our step 3, which is our sales mix, the standalone selling prices, and then we're going to multiply it with the revenue break-even in order for us to get the revenue break-even revenue for products A, B, and C. So technically, this is the revenue we need to generate for each product in order for us to meet our fixed costs. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of multi-product break-even. Other important rules when it gets to this is that we need to have only one variable cost driver for each break-even point. And the cost driver of costs should be equal to the cost driver of revenue or sales. And any other variable cost would then be a fixed cost. So technically, we have a main variable cost, and anything else will be a fixed cost. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or you'd like for me to elaborate on anything, you can just comment down below.